What's up, everybody? Thralls Mellow here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you, and one that was at least on my radar because I had heard an album by this band, and I was like, this is a good one to round out the week. Why not get into some interesting underground stuff? So we are going to go over the latest offering from Ingurgitating Oblivion, Ontology of Nought. This also comes out on the 27th of September on Willowtip Records. This band formed in 2001 in Germany. Technically, they formed in 1997 as Of Trees and Orchids, and then they changed their name. This is their fourth full-length overall I Own Continuum of Absence, and it had honestly been a long time since I had jammed it.
I'd never heard of this band until today. When I saw the description, it was avant-garde and technical death metal, and I said, okay, I can hang with that. I can hang with that all day. It sounds like something right up my alley. And then I listened to it, and we'll get there.
Yes, we shall, because that was what I was expecting. Mostly, like, technical death metal. This band I would describe as like a dissonant death metal band, at least with Continuum of Absence. And I actually went back and listened to that, and I was like, okay, I can totally do this. And then I listened to this album, which is massively different and quite possibly one of the strangest listens I've had this year.
And that's a bold statement because we reviewed Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum this year, which is pretty goddamn weird.
Yes.
This, I think, blows that out of the water.
Now, I believe in terms of the band itself, it is officially just 2 members. They do have a lot of session members, probably most notably Lil Gruber of Defeated Sanity on drums, who is one hell of a drummer. But this album definitely pushes more toward the avant-garde than, at least as far as I had heard from this band. There are a lot of other session musicians on here playing stuff like vibraphones, Tibetan singing bowls. There are what sounds like horns. There are flutes. There's a recorder, I believe. There are pianos. There are probably synths in there too. I could have sworn I heard something similar to a waterphone, which is that weird metal instrument that you hear a lot of the sounds just pop up in horror movies, like just right before Jason stabs someone in the face. I'm reasonably sure I heard a lot of non-musical instruments. Like there's parts in here where I was asking myself, was that the sound of a winch in the background? Or, they decided to record someone's wind chimes during a storm. This album is loaded with just crazy soundscapes coupled with intensely dissonant, atonal, I would even say like discordant music. Like this is just dark and weird and over an hour long.
This, as far as I can tell, would be like Gorguts and Ad Nauseum on the biggest dose of mushrooms you've ever taken ever.
Yeah, I actually wrote down immediately, like, this is like Portal and Imperial Triumphant, meeting up halfway and deciding, you know what, let's do our own improvised version of Gorguts Obscura and, kind of do it in our style, which should be musically unapproachable on so many levels, and kind of achieved. This album is just kind of insane. Not kind of insane, it's fully insane. Like, this thing's certifiable.
And it starts almost immediately. The first song, Uncreation's Whirring Loom, You Ply with Crippled Fingers. Get ready for some song titles.
That's one of the shorter ones.
Yeah, right. That song starts seemingly normal.
I don't know. Like, because the immediate feeling on this was unease. It's unsettling. Like, that's where I kind of got the horror movie vibes. Like, it's kicking off a ghost story, but it's also like a French film because all of a sudden a woman starts speaking in French. And after that mood is thoroughly established, this album just explodes into a dissonant nightmare.
It's like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but everybody in the neighborhood's dead. Take like that piano, that whimsical feeling at the beginning of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood where Trolley enters the land of make-believe and you're like, all right. But then it's like everything just goes downhill and the melodies go with it. And sometimes there's melodies that are going uphill amongst the downhill melodies. It's like everything collides all the time.
This album thrives on, I guess what you would call like counter melodies, like stuff that doesn't naturally harmonize, but they're playing at the same time to the point where it kind of blends into its own unique atonal melody. Like I can't tell you anything about chord structure or measures or anything. And honestly, unless you're like a pretty seasoned musician, I don't know if anyone I know could probably tell me what the hell they're doing here. But I know counter melodies is probably the way to describe it because at points it just sounds like everyone's kind of playing their own thing. Like the drums are doing these insane blast beats and turnovers and then settling into like jazzy, groovy pockets, while the guitars are spiraling and twisting and churning. And then on top of that, you have, well, I mean, there's a lot of vocal dynamics on here. Like you have tons of spoken word, which it kind of sounds oddly like beat poetry, especially over the jazzy sections.
Yeah.
And then you have, some clean singing that shows up on a later track called, God, here's a whole sentence for you. Lest I should perish with travel, effete and weary, as my knees refuse to bear me thither. I don't know what that means, really. But that song is almost entirely clean vocals and somewhat pleasant. But then you have the growls. The growls in here sound terrifying. And they're done with these weird cadences that sound like a broken speak and spell with like half-dead batteries in it.
That's actually pretty accurate. It sounds like just Satan just chanting in the background. And the weird thing is not only do you have him chanting, but you also have him growling, and at the same time, there's somebody whispering underneath all of it. There's a constant whisper under everything all the time.
It's kind of crazy, especially again when you consider like the vocal cadences. Like they don't follow like a natural meter or anything like that because nothing on here does. There's a lot of, again, like these just twisted off time rhythms on here. So naturally the vocals kind of have to find their own pattern. And frequently the harsh vocalist decides to go with just, again, this like weird satanic chatter, like, and yes, you just listen to them and murder your family like you're supposed to.
Oddly, amongst all this chaos, and I assure you there's nothing but chaos here, there are some pretty / digestible moments. There's some towards the end of To Weave the Tapestry of Nought, the second song. Another thing, too, I should state, is that all 5 of these songs are broken into 3 movements. So each song has 3 movements apiece. So we'll say in 2C, To Weave the Tapestry of Nought, the third movement, there are some pretty vocals, I guess, or a little bit like quieter moments. Because what happens in this record is after you get through all the chaos, it's like each song has a moment where it'll break into some kind of weird, like almost Exvius style fusion-y jazz, just to kind of give your brain a rest. It happens in the end of To Weave the Tapestry of Nought. It happens in The Blossoms of Your Tomorrow Shall Unfold in My Heart. There's like some really like super sexy jazzy moments in that song. Oh yeah,
dude. The jazzy swing rhythms on here, like, those are probably some of my favorite moments, honestly. Like the cleaner passages on here where everything isn't like just densely packed with like noise and ambience and hatred and darkness. These kind of like lush moments kind of open up the songs and again kind of give your brain a second to reset. But it's definitely done in like an avant-garde way. Like there's not a lot of what I would call like traditional harmonies or melodies on here. And even the counter melody thing kind of plays with the vocals. Like there are these lush sections of these weird atonal but still oddly catchy moments in To Weave the Tapestry of Nought. And admittedly, I was kind of like, lulled into them, like, oh, this is pretty, this is nice. And then it practically like jump scares me as it goes headlong into a fever dream and just goes absolutely nuts. But on The Blossoms of Your Tomorrow Shall Unfold in My Heart, there is like a really pretty moment towards the end. And it's kind of interesting how it transitions into it because you hear this vocal melody kind of in the background amongst all the dissonance and satanic chatter and insane drum work. And then everything kind of drops out and it isolates those vocals. And I'm not entirely sure if like the first part of the vocal passage is actually being played backwards because you get that kind of that whooshing noise. Yeah. But it does play it forwards towards the end because there's a repeated line on there. Like, okay, that I can make out. Maybe the first part's in a different language, but I kind of heard it like it was recorded backwards, which totally makes sense for this band anyway, because honestly, I think you could play this entire album backwards and it would still kind of sound the same. Oddly enough, like one of the things that stood out to me that actually was like a little bit more catchy, because I'm a basic pleb and I just, like when it comes out of avant-garde music, I look for something, a little bit more grounded in it for me to kind of like hold on to, because the rest of, the album is running like a tilt-a-whirl at the fair that hasn't been, like serviced in like 50 years. But the lead work on here, honestly, it became kind of like, something for me to latch onto, because while it is wild and crazy, like there's a lot of like jazz fusion stuff in it, it is a little bit more on the melodic side, at least in comparison to like every weird atonal riff on here. And I believe all the lead work was done by Tom Fountainhead Geldeschlager, who spent some time in Obscura, and he's been in a lot of other projects. I believe he's usually playing bass, but he's actually doing lead guitars on here. And that was definitely something for me to latch onto, just because there were like some, at least like really cool runs in the leads, and, the rhythm guitarists would find absolutely no way to harmonize them at all. They were just like, we're just going to play this whole measure with this bone saw on our guitars, and let's see what noise it makes.
It's more like playing the guitar upside down in the dark in a room full of bees. Now for me, a part that kind of centered me came all the way at the end of the album, and by this time we're at least like 50 minutes into this record. The barren earth oozes blood, shakes and moans to drink her children's gore. There's a lot more chuggy moments to resonate with. There's a lot more dissonant chuggy moments to resonate with, and from movement to movement in this song, it kind of holds on to those heavier moments.
It has a more, it's hard even calling like their style of tech death, at least on their previous albums, like, it's straightforward. All right, it's straightforward compared to this. Like, a little bit more of their older sound comes out on this song. Like, you have, like, legit breakdowns. There's a really cool sliding riff on there. And there's just, like, some flat-out, like, just riffs. Like, we're not trying to play, like, some obscure, like, these notes don't go together. Let's play them anyway.
To me, it was actually more comparable to Buckethead's Cuckoo Clocks from Hell, Buckethead's metal album. There's a lot of moments, I think, that are more akin to what he would play in his style of avant-garde.
Most of this album, to me, like, there's, like an improvisational feel to it. Like, this is, like, stream of consciousness playing and writing. But at the same time, like, there's so many nuances and so many things that have to be so pinpoint and precise on here that otherwise the whole thing kind of falls apart. My thing is, I don't know if I could tell the difference. This whole album is wildly creative. Like, it is inventive. It marches to the beat of several drummers. And I think it just completely scoffs at the idea of contemporary music. And I kind of like that. Like, that's kind of cool. They're really doing kind of their own thing here. Granted, it is very comparable to a lot of bands we already mentioned, but I don't know, I kind of like this just crazy experimentation on here. It's like this band decided to score a Hieronymus Bosch painting. Like, they just looked at one of those paintings like, yeah, you see that dude that's farting ravens and coal dust? I think I could write a guitar line for that.
And more so, to me, it was more like an orchestra without a conductor, or more so an orchestra that didn't want the conductor and just booted him out of the room. And it seems like they all play whenever the hell they want to play, but at the same time, it all seems to mesh well. Kind of goes back to like a stream of consciousness, but very pinpoint and accurate in their movements.
And when it comes on like the idea of avant-garde, is it intended to be like more of an artistic statement than it is to be like anything remotely contemporary? Because I really can't find anything contemporary on here, so I assume it's got to be like an artistic statement here. And well, the issue there for me is I have no idea what the statement is, because there's so much going on in here. Like, there's constant chatter, whether it's growls and speaking and, what sound like movie excerpts and beat poetry and stuff like that, and then like the din of different noises and such. It's a cacophony of just strange on here. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, like, is this meant to be like a complete deconstruction of music as itself or something like that? I have no idea. But I know that it is truly bizarre but oddly impressive. Like, this is definitely like several hundred types of music theory come together in a series of musical seizures that, I can't fully get my head around, but at the same time, granted, it feels like, it gives me anxiety. I kind of want to understand it more. And full stop, I am like kind of hit or miss with avant-garde bands. Like some of them really impress me and some of them just kind of come across as just way too odd for me. And I don't know, this is kind of leaning more towards the way too odd. And it's got a couple other issues too. Like one, this thing is long and you feel the length of this album because not only is it just, a lot of stuff that is hard to kind of grasp. Like this is like trying to like grasp at fog. That's pointless. But, it does have its moments where it's really cool and then it kind of curtails into absolute madness again. But the songs feel drawn out, especially towards the end of certain songs.
Particularly the end of "The blossoms of your tomorrow shall unfold in my heart." The very last movement of that song is the clean singing part, and then there's a little lead, but then the guy starts screaming over everything, and then when it really ends, it's got a robot, I guess.
No, it's just some English dude, and he says no more.
He says no more.
And
over.
They loop it.
And over. And over. Yeah, he says no more 100,000 times.
Yeah, it just loops it and then like continuously distorts it. It keeps getting, louder. And, by the time it gets like so distorted and so loud, I think it just sounds like he's saying nipple over and over again. But it just drags out the end of the song. This is like another 2 minutes at the end of what I assume is like a 15-minute song if you add all the movements together. To Weave the Tapestry of Nought also has a very long, drawn-out, just kind of like ambient section towards the end. And lest I should perish with travel, effete, and worry, as my knees refuse to bear me thither. Man, I love saying that entire title every time I talk about this song. But the end of that song, well, I think it's honestly one of the most accessible but just like interesting songs. Like it reminds me a lot of Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum.
100%.
And I still really like that band. But the end of this is, it's just like drawn out chatter. It sounds like someone speaking maybe Russian, but it's very muffled, and it sounds like he might be saying something very important, but I don't understand Russian. Also, again, it's very muffled. Like, and that's the end of the song. But it goes on for like what seems like 2 minutes. And I was like, why is this here? This album's already an hour long.
But at the same time, too, you mentioned jump scares, and that's very accurate on this record because when they drone out with something that long, it's almost like a piece of you is like waiting for something to jump out at you. And usually it does. Yeah. Usually when it goes quiet like that and it's just like nonsense, it's when the next song kicks in that it's a full board, just like, blah! And you're like, what the hell happened?
Yeah, dude, every like quiet, pleasant moment on here, it's a trap. They're just waiting for you, like, oh, I'm gonna I'm gonna lean into the speaker a little bit. This is nice. And then, blah!
Yep.
But overall, honestly, like this was kind of an interesting album. I listened to this thing 3 times. Actually, I wrote down, I have stared into the void 3 times. And I still feel just as confused, even though I paused and rewound it and tried to pick out every little nuance I could. It's just a very strange album. And I mean, it begs a lot of questions. Like, one, is epilepsy contagious? Because I feel like you could get it from listening to this. Like, this album is a series of bright flashes and screaming in a small room. Like, you're trapped in the room with this band and there's this intense feeling of claustrophobia, only for like brief moments of light to kind of creep in, like, oh, hey, that's nice. Do I get a meal now? Like, no, go back to your hole. But overall, I kind of got to give this 3 stars at least, because I did enjoy parts of this. I do appreciate it on like a musical creativity level.
Oh, yeah.
Like, would I listen to this again? Probably not, unless I wanted to clear everyone out of my house at a party and like, yeah, this is what we're listening to. You could leave or we all go to hell together. It's interesting. Like, it kind of draws me in with all the different stuff that's in here. And honestly, like, I'm impressed with like the layers of insanity on here. Like, this is just a really absolutely crazy album. Like, this is like King Crimson on bath salts and then add all the other crazy bands that we have listed, and I think you'd get something kind of close to this. Again, if you're a big fan of Ad Nauseam, Imperial Triumphant, Portal, even Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum, check this out. It's a really wild listen, and as far as I listen with this band, vastly different than anything that they have done before, but it's a wild ride. Check it out.
It's really hard to even rate this. Like, I'm going to give it a 3, and to be honest with you, due to its creative nature and the absolutely wild, bonkers musicianship that's on here, I don't want to shy away from that at all. It's a 3 for me, but it might be pushing a little higher. It's so tough to describe because there's so much going on, and each and every corner and twist and turn is filled with the weirdest, strangest collection of melodies or harmonies or whatnot just around every corner. For me, it's the constant whispering amidst the screams. Like, it's just like, that's just, ugh.
Dude, it's like Satan whispering all your failures in your ear. Like,
right.
You suck at everything and you're gonna die.
Right. The slow down moments, the jazzy moments, the drum work, the hi-hat work in those jazzy moments is just, it's awesome. The biggest, fattest grooves you can think of in these jazzy moments. The pretty vocals, like the fact that it's wild and it's calm, and the mixture of the two, again, is not something you think would necessarily work, but somehow this band found a way to put it all together. In the last track, the barren earth oozes blood, shakes and moans to drink her children's gore. In that very last track, they're playing every instrument all at once. Everything that's in this record, this is everything in the kitchen sink together. They're playing it all at once, and then they play it backwards. And then, is it supposed to make sense? I don't know. Normally, I'm really, really big into avant-garde death metal. That's just my wheelhouse. The crazier, the better. I listened to this 1.5, almost 2 times today, and I messaged him before I got here, and I said, dude, this record's fucked. And he's like, I know. I think it was more fun writing down analogies in this record than it was listening to it at certain points. But it's a trip. This is where the wild things are. If you like Ad Nauseam, Gorguts, Portal, Blue DOS Nord, Imperial Triumphant, really just anything crazy you can think of, think crazier and check this record out.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also starting memberships here relatively soon. No more Patreon. I think we're just kind of done with that as soon as I figure out how to cancel it, because I'm like not tech savvy at all.
I have no idea. I'm going to look into it.
Yeah, we're going to figure that out.
Yep.
Either way, though, thrallsmetal.com is still where you go to get Thralls Metal stuff. We have t-shirts, both old and new. The old ones are discounted, provided we have your size. And we even have hats, too. So if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
And there's always tons of stuff going on at Thralls Metal, because what else are we going to do with our time? Album reviews, discography rankings, discussion panels, multiple forums, collection updates, because Nick can't stop collecting CDs, states of metal, is it metal, is it not metal, what's John Jamming's going to be coming back finally, because it's about goddamn time, you guys. Anyway, all this stuff we do here at Thralls Metal, we do all for you guys. We genuinely appreciate everybody that's paid us any attention in the last 6 years. To all our family, our friends, our subscribers, all the connections we made along the way, we all appreciate it. It means the absolute world to us, you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you guys absolutely roll, and again, tons of content coming your way. So one more big thank you because of how awesome you guys are, and it's a lot. And we will catch you later.